Bye. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and tonight's going to be bookish content. For today's video, yes, it's bookish. It's not only bookish, but even more specifically, it's manga-ish because I am reading my I'm reading my third ever manga. My first ever manga was the Tokyo Ghoul series, then I read Uzumaki by Junji Ito. My third ever manga is going to be Death Note. This manga series is by Tsugumi Ohba and the art is by Takashi Obata. It's a total of 12 volumes, but I have the black edition, meaning it's going to be 6 volumes in my case, so the black edition has 2 volumes in one. I have owned this since Christmas of 2018. One of my college roommates got it for me then because we bonded over Death Note, so I've actually seen the anime twice. I watched it when I was 14, so my freshman year of high school. My sophomore year of college, me and my roommate bonded over the fact that we both seen Death Note because I wasn't like a huge anime fan at the time. She's a huge anime fan, and that was like the one we both seen. So we decided to rewatch it together. We watched the shitty live action on Netflix, which made me want to write my own name in a Death Note, but that's besides the point. I am now reading the manga for the first time. If you're here for my blind reactions, that's obviously unfortunately not going to happen because I do know the majority of the story, but I have heard the anime did make some changes, so I'm interested to see what those changes are, and plus I just want to say I've read Death Note. So I thought I would vlog my experience, see how long it takes me, just cause work, COVID, there's a lot going on. I want to take you guys along for the ride. Just heads up, if you're watching this video without ever having read Death Note or seen Death Note, this will be a spoilery vlog. Let's get started.
Even though I'm different.
Hi! So, I've officially finished part 1 of the Black Edition, meaning I finished the first volume of Death Note. I didn't realize it was only 7 chapters. So, first and foremost, when I was reading it, I realized that Death Note, in the beginning at least, it is very info-dumpy because there's just so much you need to know about this world in order for it to make sense. I can't exactly blame the author for that because like I said, there's a lot going on and it's just such an intricate world. So Light finds the Death Note right away. It's one of the first things that happens in chapter 1 after Ryuk drops it. And it was interesting seeing him like mentally fight with himself, like, is it okay to use this and to punish criminals with it? This is not working. Like, is it okay to use it and punish criminals? But then the more you read, the more you realize it's not really just criminals he wants to kill off. He's basically killing off anyone that he deems inferior, which to me, this is when the point of the story kicks in. Here is Light playing God, but what gives him the right to decide what is and isn't good? Like, obviously we can agree murdering is bad, kidnapping is bad, and like obviously those are the first few people he starts to kill off, but as the series goes on, and he said so himself, he's going to start killing off anyone he deems inferior. He's not going to make the world a perfect place. But it's like, what gives you the right to decide that? What exactly does good mean? We all have different definitions of what good means. Like, what about those people who are morally gray? How is Light going to handle them? We all make mistakes. And like, as the series goes on, you see L killing off people for the simplest things. So it's like, what exactly does good mean? Which I think is one of the many questions this series is trying to ask its readers. And it's at this moment that I realize L is egotistical. He thinks very highly of himself. Did I say L? I meant Light, not L. Light. That's why it was interesting seeing him fight about if he can use the Death Note because we're watching him becoming a god. And then later in the series, he does call himself a god. L appears in the next chapter, which is a lot earlier than I thought. There's also a Kira website, so people who like stand up to Kira, they're the ones who named him. I might be misremembering, but I thought in the anime, Light chose that name for himself. I thought he chose the name Kira. Again, I haven't seen the anime in a few years. I could be misremembering. But I will say the Kira stands, like the way they were talking about Kira, like praise Kira, he's doing nothing wrong, the world deserves this. Reminds me of Jaegerist from Attack on Titan, so take that as you will. So we get to the part of the manga where Light kills off the man he thinks is L, and that's how L realizes Kira does need not only your real name, but also your face. Sorry if my Keurig's really loud, but I have nowhere else to put this camera. My favorite part so far is the reveal that the chief of the NPA is Light's father. And because at this point, like, the chief was introduced, you just don't know his name. I don't think you actually know his name just yet. So here I am in chapter 3, I'm looking at the panels of Light walking down the stairs. I turn the page. The whole page is just Light and the chief, and Light says, "Hey Dad," and the chief is like, "Hey Light." I thought that was an excellent reveal, and I thought that was a great way for the authors to create some tension within the story, because now the chief is trying to find the murderer, not knowing it's his own son. I forgot how smart everyone was. Like, Elle quickly figured out that Kira could be a student because of the time of day the deaths were. They're all, on weekdays they're at night, and then on weekends they're kind of like sporadically throughout the day. I never would have figured that out, which is why, this is probably why I'm not a detective. But then Light is pretty smart too, because he tells Ryuk that was his point. He wanted them to know that he's a student, because then he was going to start manipulating the deaths within the Death Note, so that way they start dying while he's at school, and it's like, oh, guess you can't be a student now. As these people are dying while Light is in school, Elle quickly figures out that it's a distraction. Again, how are y'all so smart? I would never figure that out. But again, that's why I don't work for the police force, that's why I don't work for the FBI. As much as being a detective would be cool, like, I would love to be the people on Criminal Minds, but I'm not smart. I have no patience, because I know sometimes cases can go on for years. That's why I don't have Elle's job. And again, going back to forgetting how smart everyone is, Light has a hiding spot for his Death Note. You can only open the false bottom with a pen, and but he has like electricity going all around it. This Keurig is loud as hell. So therefore, if you do not use that pen, like, it just blows up in flames, because there's gasoline in it too, or oil, whatever he used. It just blows up in flames. And it's like, you know what I would have done? I would have stuck the notebook under my bed. I would have stuck it under my futon. I would put it somewhere like in my underwear drawer. Light is smart. No wonder he's like the top student in the country right now. You also find out Light is purposely trying to get Elle suspicious of the police or the NPA. Therefore, in return, the NPA is suspicious of Elle. They rat out Elle, like, using his real name, and are essentially doing Light's dirty work so that Light doesn't have to do that research himself. And it seems to be working, because you turn the page and here's Elle calling the FBI in America and telling these people, like, hey, can you follow around these Japanese detectives? So, I always knew Elle was smart, but I just forgot. I just didn't remember him kind of like falling for Light's tricks so easily. Like, Light has these people in a chokehold. We get some more info dump. For example, we talk about Shinigami and their history. I forgot that they technically can die. I mean, I know there's that one Shinigami who dies because of her love for Misa. Misa? Yeah. So I remembered that, but for some reason that computed in my head as the only way they could die. But Ryuk talks about how there are other ways for them to die. So then we find out the reason Shinigami even used Death Notes in the first place is because that's how they extend their lifespans. So, for example, if I were to naturally live for 100 years, but at 50 years old, a Shinigami decides to kill me, they gain those 50 years that I lost. So then Ryuk explains the eyeballs, which I do remember. The Shinigami could see the lifespan and a person's real name, so that's why the Death Notes always work for them. He makes a deal with Light, but tells him you're gonna lose half of the remainder of your life. For example, if Light has 40 years left, he's going to lose 20. But Light's really smart. He's like, well, if I'm going to be a god for a while, I can't, like, lose out on my life. I'll just work my way around that, which we know he does. And then basically the volume ended with Light realizing someone from the FBI is following him around, so his plan is essentially working. He's trying to ruin the FBI agent's path, so he writes in the Death Note that this murderer dude is gonna hijack the bus. The FBI agent reveals himself to Light by giving him his ID, and then the murderer touches the page of the Death Note, sees Ryuk, freaks out, and is hit by a car as per the Death Note. And that is where we are at. This is very good. I was a little worried going into this. I was thinking like, oh, what if I'm bored? Because I know what's coming, but I'm not. I didn't realize how much I forgot. I'm still vastly enjoying this. I'm vastly enjoying the art. The artwork is amazing, and I'm going to finish up making this coffee. I'm going to add some sugar, and then I'm going to go sit down and try to maybe complete part 2 today. I don't think I will, but that's the goal. The goal is to get at least like halfway through. I'm at this part of the manga, guys, where she comes into play, and I am dreading this. I was so sad at the end of her arc. I'm not ready. Look at him. Hi. Well, we're back. because I finished volume 1 of Death Note Black Edition. Let's get started talking about the story. Light is now going after these people who are going after him. It goes back to something I did say earlier, like Light is killing off people he thinks are criminals. But what does it mean to be a criminal? What exactly does it mean to be good? So a conclusion I've came to is Light is killing off these people going after him because they're trying to stop him from doing what he thinks is a noble cause. And because they're trying to prevent this noble cause, he thinks of them as criminals. Hence why he's killing them off, hence why he's grouped them with like actual criminals. So the FBI agents were killed due to Light's shenanigans. And then Ray unknowingly writes names in the Death Note. That's how Light was able to kill off these people without actually having the file physically in his hands. And then my girl, Naomi, is introduced because we all know where that's going and I'm still angry about it. I was so upset. Here we are. She's introduced. But, you know, some time passes and we finally get to the scene where Light and Naomi are discussing what's going on. And something I didn't catch on the first time I was watching the anime, Light says his name and he tells Naomi which kanji he uses to spell his name. Like, I always just thought that was him being Light and being charming. But while reading, I realized it was to get her to say her kanji, so therefore he could write her name correctly in the Death Note. So I thought that was very smart on Light's part, and it's a very subtle way to get the correct name, and I can't believe I didn't notice that right away. But even when reading this manga, I didn't catch it. It took me a few pages to be like, holy fuck, I need to go back and reread that. Like, that was so smart. But as we know, she gave him a fake name. So it ended up not working. And good on her for being suspicious. She used to be an FBI agent after all, so she probably knows all the tricks. And what I do find interesting though was Light's mental freak out about the Death Note not working, because it takes him a second to realize what she did. So now he's going through all these trials and tribulations trying to figure out her real name. And something I caught was that at one point he actually thought about raping her, essentially. Like, he literally says, like, well, I'm a man, she's a woman, I could take advantage of her. And I just thought that was interesting because, like, we have this guy who's killing off criminals to create a utopia, thinking about raping someone, which is a crime that shows he's just as capable of being a criminal as the criminals he's killing off. Which I'm aware it's the point of the series, but I just think that was good foreshadowing, another subtle hint about what Light is to become. And I mean, the thought passed, he obviously didn't do that to her, but it's just like, you're gonna criticize these people for being bad people, but the fact that you thought it and considered it, like, dude, you are just as bad as some of these people whose names you're writing in your book.
Light's internal conflict here also reminded me of something that Ryuk said earlier in the series, but Ryuk said something about how those who have the Death Note are doomed to a life of misery or something along those lines. And although Light on the outside may seem like his life is going the way he wants it to, at least in the beginning of the series, again at this point, the subtle doom and misery that Ryuk is talking about to me are these internal moments of panic. Constantly throughout the series, Light is, maybe I shouldn't use the word panicking because at this point that could be too strong of a word, but he is constantly overthinking. He never stops thinking about the next steps because the Death Note has essentially taken over his whole life. And now that he has this notebook, he can never have a day of rest.
Eventually twists the situation. He makes up this whole shebang, like, oh, do you want to join the NPA? Do you want to be in the search party? And Naomi's like, yes! Gives out her real name. And I think that's when we find out what her real name is. And then she dies, and so do I. I was so upset when she died, because I feel like she had the potential to be this great character, but because she had that potential, the authors had to kill her off. Like, she quickly caught on to everything, and you find out that she once worked for L, so that's probably where she learned it from. She caught on to some things that L didn't catch on to. I mean, she literally freaked out Light. So I firmly believe that with the type of character Naomi was allowed to live for the rest of the story if she was not killed off. Death Note would be solved within 10 more chapters. And unfortunately, because she's that smart and that capable of solving this crime, that's why the authors had to kill her off, and I'm upset. And I feel like at that point of the series, that's kind of a turning point, because that's when you realize how not morally good of a person Light is. Because, I mean, it goes back to that one thing I was saying. Light's killing these people that are going after him because he thinks the fact that they're stopping him from creating this utopia is a crime in itself. So now he thinks of them as criminals, So he killed off Naomi because she's now a criminal in his eyes. And, you know, he's just gonna get worse from here.
キラだから
And now there's like cameras and bugs in his home and like who cares? That's basically when the volume ends. And we meet my least favorite character in the next volume, I'm pretty sure. I want to fight Misa. I've always hated her. She's so fucking annoying. But maybe I'll like her more because now I don't have to actually like hear her voice reading this. This was fucked. So hi, I'm back with an update on Death Note. Since last you saw me, I'm already halfway through volume 3 of the Black Edition. Fun. Life just kind of just got in the way, so I was reading, it's just I didn't have time to like actually update. Volume 2 starts out with L at the fucking college, which I thought was extremely risky. But he wasn't even at the college, he was just at the test, and they both got in, and they were both #1. But I just thought that was risky, especially because L doesn't like his face being seen, and I know everyone else doesn't know he's L, but I was still like, what are you doing? But he's so dedicated to the craft that he's gonna redo college just to get on Light's ass, and I can't relate. I do not want to redo college. Light's father had a heart attack, and like the most shocking thing about that was that he didn't orchestrate it. For some reason I thought he would have. I also wrote down, Light says anyone older with a Death Note would use it for their own gain. This is foreshadowing. I don't even remember what I meant by that, but I guess it's just foreshadowing to Light himself, and actually foreshadowing to where I am right now with the whole Yotsuba thing. I mean, it's also kind of ironic because Light is a young man, and no matter how he twists it, he's using it for his own gain. At one point, one of the conversations was, what can I do to prove that I'm not Kira? And I think it was L who said, well, if you weren't Kira, you wouldn't have to do anything. Woo, on his ass. It's like, it's kind of just funny because Light's doing all these things he can do to prove that he's not Kira, and yet no matter what he does, L sees through it, and it's just funny. Like, I feel like L just needs to, not L, sorry. I just feel like Light just needs to give up. Like, L knows. But we know he won't give up because his ego's so big, which is what makes this story so fun. And then there was a whole, like, tapes thing on TV where this, like, conspiracy theorist TV starts playing tapes that are claimed to be Kira. We know it's like a second Kira. Even Light has no idea, which I thought was well written just because the way it's written, like, at first you think Light has something to do with it and the reader just didn't see him do it, but then Light gets confused. That's when you realize it's someone else, and I thought that was like a great entryway into the introduction of Misa. But then we get to meet Misa. I'm glad we don't have to hear her voice, because oh my god, her voice in the anime is fucking annoying. She just kind of reveals everything in these tapes, like the whole Shinigami thing, and like looking back at it, I'm shocked like they didn't keep up with that. But anyway, she used like a friend's fingerprints. That was pretty smart of her. I never would have thought of doing that myself. Jumping back in again, but something I was thinking about while editing this video is the whole thing where Misa was obviously making these tapes, but then Light and L worked together to make tapes in response to her claiming to be Kira, and she went back and forth with that for a while. We're like revealing things like the Shinigami and asking, do you have the eyes? And I just thought it was interesting she would do that because for all she knew, someone was playing a prank on her. Luckily, it worked in her favor, but it's just so interesting that that was never brought up in the story itself, that someone could have been playing a prank on her, and she didn't even think about that. The police warned second Kira, or Misa, that Kira is going to use her and kill her. From what we know she doesn't get killed by the end of the series, but they are right about using her. Light doesn't love her. Then we get to the scene where she is in Light's room. She meets Ryuk. Light can see Rem. First of all, Rem's a man. I always thought Rem was a woman, but they keep using he pronouns. But I remember when watching the anime, I was so shocked about Rem's death. Now that I'm reading the manga, I really should not have been shocked because Rem does threaten Light. He's like, if you ever cause Misa to die or something happens to her, I'm going to write your name in the Death Note. And Light brings up the fact that, well, if you try to save someone with love, doesn't that mean you die? And Rem was just like, yeah, that's obviously foreshadowing to what eventually happens to Rem. I should have never have been shocked. That foreshadowing is so fucking obvious too. Misa, her life was supposed to be a lot shorter, but she was almost, I think, raped. Either raped and murdered, but then not Death Note, but then the Shinigami that was obsessed with her wrote the killer's name in the Death Note, which in turn killed him. Because if Shinigami kills someone out of love, then they disappear, then they die themselves.
Also, I don't remember this from reading the manga, but I did read somewhere too that if a Shinigami dies by saving you, you actually receive their remaining lifespan. And now it just totally makes sense why Misa just never dies in this series, because not only is she getting the lifespan of, I think his name was Jealous, but now she's also eventually going to get the remaining lifespan for Rem. The woman's living forever, despite the fact that she gets the eyes twice, and so halves her lifespan twice. I can't believe it took me this long to realize it, and I'll probably mention it again in part 2 of this vlog.
So there's that whole scene where Light is asking Rem to kill L, and he's wooing Misa, and Misa's just falling for it, and I can't stand it. What can I say? Like, as a reader, we obviously know Light is manipulating her and using her. Because if you think about it, she doesn't love Light. She loves Kira, because she mentioned she appreciates Kira for killing the people that killed her parents. So I'm of the opinion, and I'm maybe thinking too deep into this, but I don't think she truly loves Light. I think what she loves is the idea of Kira, and that's what she's truly obsessed with. Because, like, the way Light treats her is garbage. Never, ever let me get as whipped for a man as Misa is with Light. I am not putting my life on the line for you. But then we get to the part where Misa is found out. She is found out to be the second Kira because of all the fibers and her hair on these tapes. And she is taken away to jail. The way they have her chained up is a little weird. But L has his ways, I guess. It's a little disturbing. L and the police think she's talking to herself, when in reality she is talking to Rem, begging Rem to, like, let her go, just take away the Death Note, which Rem does. And then when you give up ownership of the Death Note, you forget everything about it. So now Misa doesn't have the eyes anymore, and she knows who Light is, but I don't think she really understands why she likes Light. And then she has no idea who Rem is. And we find out because Rem meets Ryuk and Light in his room. Rem tells him what happened, and that's when Light has this grand plan to jail himself to prove a point that he is not Kira. And he tells Ryuk, when I say get rid of it, no matter the context, get rid of the Death Note and leave. And I thought the context for how he did use those words was interesting. And then at this point his father chooses to jail himself too, because she's so disappointed that L keeps accusing Light, and, like, understandably offended. But we, the readers, know he should not be offended. But anyway, so I do like how the context Light uses. He's in jail for a week, so Al asks him how he's doing, and then Light says, yeah, I know I must look pretty bad in here, but this pride, I'll have to get rid of it. So thinking about it, what Al is hearing is, I have to swallow my pride and just prove myself because I swear to God I'm not Kira. And now Light officially has lost all his memories of the Death Note, and he is in what I call his innocent phase, which is very cute. It was a little scary with the whole thing with his father, like, threatening to kill him and Misa, but we're gonna move past that, because again, L has very strange ways of dealing with things that sometimes I think are a little monstrous. But I'm not a detective. I'm not the world's #1 detective. Light is very endearing at this point. He is chained to L. That has to be really awkward. Like, what if you have to go to the bathroom? They don't explain these things. Like, if I'm chained to someone and I'm on my period, first of all, I don't like going to the bathroom in front of people. And now you're asking me to change, like, my pad and shit in front of people? Absolutely not. Like, that has to be so awkward. And what I do appreciate about this Light is that, so Light with the Death Note had no problem manipulating Misa, as we saw, but I noticed Light without the Death Note absolutely refuses to do that. Because I'll actually suggest that at one point, pretend to be her boyfriend, pretend to love her, and Light was like, I can't, that goes against my moral code. And it's just funny because we saw previously that he had, when he had the Death Note, he had no problem doing that. But again, innocent Light. The Japanese police wants to leave the Kira case, so they're telling all these people to stop. Light's dad and Matsuda, and I think Mogi, his name is, they choose to just leave the police and stay on the case and just basically work on the case illegally. Aizawa doesn't want to do that, and I know L plays, like, this trick on him to see what he would do. He feels manipulated, so he leaves, which I'm not really shocked about. Throughout the manga, it was shown that he had his opinions on the way L does things, and he had a very hard time like keeping secrets from his family. And at one point they do show him crying in front of his daughter, and then I cried. So now we have been introduced to Yotsuba, which is one of like the richest companies in Japan. I forgot all about this arc. I forgot all about Yotsuba. So I'm in kind of like newish territory. They are using the Death Note for their own gain. Like Light previously said, if it was given to someone older, they would use it for their own gain. So every meeting they try to figure out what like mega owners should they kill off, just so the 8 of them could rise to the top and make Yotsuba the biggest business in the world. And Rem is connected to one of them, and he does not like what is going on. He even makes a comment that humans are basically the scum of the earth and humans scare him. And at this point, we don't know which one is connected to Rem. Like whenever he's talking and you see Rem in the background, his speech bubble covers his head. And I think that's a very clever way to hide his identity until the authors are ready to reveal who it is. But this guy, he doesn't consider himself Kira. All eight of them consider themselves working alongside Kira, and the other 7 don't know which one has the Death Note. Back to our main group, Light makes a connection that something's amiss. So Matsuda, who is Misa's manager, or at least pretending to be Misa's manager, takes it upon himself to sneak into Yotsuba, find out some secrets. He's listening in on the meeting, but then they open the door on him and he falls in the meeting place. Our main group's upset because it's very predictable. Matsuda, he's very naive. He has great intentions, but his execution kind of sucks. And then Matsuda fakes his death. He pretends to fall from a building. So now Matsuda is dead, so therefore the Kira people didn't have to kill him themselves. And what I find interesting is I do wonder, the guy that Rem is connected to, does he have the eyes? I'm assuming he does not, because Matsuda does use his fake name. You never see a panel where the guy is off to the side saying, "Oh, curious, that's not his name." And I feel like he would know if Matsuda really died or not if he had the eyes. I don't really know how that works in that regard. But now thinking about it, like the crew needs to keep Matsuda in hiding. Updating again, since during the last clip, my camera fucking died. I finished volume 3 of the Black Edition, so let's just jump right into this. But because of Matsuda's fuck up, he now has to stay hidden so Yotsuba doesn't find out about him. So they fake his death. And Matsuda's upset it's not on the front pages. And it's like, dude, you risked everything just now. Like, you fucked up so bad. But I also love that man with all my heart. I'm just gonna skip a few things because admittedly, volume 3 was actually a little difficult for me to get through. This Yotsuba arc is my least favorite from what I've read so far. I miss the days when Light was Kira. He is kind of cute when he's all innocent and shit, but at the same time, as a character, he was more fun to read about when he was committing mass murder. As much as I disagreed with some of his ideals, admittedly, he was really fun. He was really fun to read when he was super evil. But they're listening in on Yotsuba because apparently with a company that high tech and special and rich and blah blah blah, for some reason their security was really weak. So one of Owl's friends was able to put cameras in. Now they're watching in on Yotsuba. Well, I guess Light too, but mostly Owl is learning all the information we already know. That's another reason why this edition was just so hard to read, is because we were relearning information. Like, I understand since Light forgot everything, he needs to learn it too, but it got redundant. A few times in this manga, or in this volume, I mean, L tests Light to make sure what Light would say. If Light would say this, he's Kira. If he doesn't say this, he's not Kira. Light gets mad, they get a fight. This happens like 3 times. It gets old every time, and I just want to skip past those panels. They have like a double agent, like the pretty long-haired dude. So then there's a meeting with only 4 members, because that's when they're gonna go talk with Misa. And because the other 2 aren't there, we can rule them out as Kira, because we do see Rem. Storytelling-wise, I thought it was actually an interesting way to do that, helping the reader like filter out people. Rem sneaks into the bathroom with Misa while she's doing her thing, gets Misa to touch the Death Note paper, so now Misa can see Rem again, but she does not get her memories back, so Rem tells her everything. So now Misa is aware that Light used to be Kira, but gave up the Death Note, doesn't have the memories anymore, so the power of Kira was passed on to someone else. And this is actually when we do find out Rem is female, because I know, like, for a while there I was really confused, because I swear to God she was female in the anime, but then the manga was using he, him pronouns, but then Rem in this specific chapter says she is female. And Light had an inner turmoil moment where he almost found out himself that he is Kira, but he's like, I'd never be able to do this. And it's just funny seeing the difference between Light as Kira and Light having no memories, just because of how nice he is and how sweet and how good he is. You know, and I would even say he's nicer than pre-Death Note Light, because pre-Death Note Light had a huge ego. This Light kind of doesn't. Like, he's very well-grounded, he's very humble, but it does get tricky, because there is at one point where he's, like, debating with himself if he'd be able to do what Kira does.
I feel like the difference in these two versions of Light shows how badly a Death Note can corrupt you, because the Death Note is just such a powerful tool. And it goes back, there's that one phrase that says, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the Death Note is just such a powerful tool that you do crumble underneath that pressure. So with it, now that Light had this power to do whatever he wanted, he became more and more evil, arguably, but without it, that pressure eases off his shoulders. And I also feel like this conversation Light has with himself just proves that he was always doomed to become this person, in a sense, if given the opportunity, just because part of the conversation, not only is it showing that he is nicer without this tool of evil, but part of this conversation was Light realizing he does have the same morals, in a sense, as Kira. Yes, this Light is nicer, but by having those morals, he is doomed to just become evil no matter what, given the right tools.
So now that Misa knows everything, including the fact that she was the second Kira, she takes it upon herself to kind of trick the guy who is Kira, who does actually finally get announced to us. Misa now knows whoever Rem is connected to, or whoever Rem is standing behind, that's the new Kira. She walks back into the room, and then finally his face is revealed. It's the creepy looking guy whose name I can't remember. I can see it's the guy who looks like who looks like the Joker, like the cartoon Jokers. Higuchi. So at this point, Misa takes it upon herself to take some of the investigation into her own hands. She gets in the car with him, and he admits to her that he is Kira, and she gets it all on phone. It's all recorded. She brings it back to headquarters, and that's when L and Light have this plan to catch him using Sakura TV, and they go on this wild goose chase. And actually, before that wild goose chase, he lists out the whole plan of how they're going to catch him, step-by-step detail, and I'm like, the fact that you're doing this now before we all see it play out, it's going to go to shit at some point. It just took a little too long to go to shit. It went extremely well, to the point I was extremely suspicious. Higuchi was trying so hard to get Mitsuda's name, his real name. I spent that whole time wondering why he doesn't just get the Shinigami eyes. It took him a very long time to finally get those eyes. I also forgot to mention other members of Yotsuba had like a meeting without him. Now that I see their names in front of me, I can like see them, but it was Shimura and Mito, the guy who looks like Light, and the pretty long-haired guy. And I just thought that was interesting, just because these characters in their Yotsuba meetings just have like different personalities than when it was just those three. And it really proved to me how scared everyone actually was and how against this they were. Because yeah, in the meetings they were discussed what people to kill, but that has to take a toll on people. And hints are dropped that Higuchi was Kira the whole time, because he's the one who goes straight to killing, whereas everyone else thinks it through first, and killing is actually a last resort. So I should have seen Higuchi coming, honestly. Shimura was the one who was scared, I guess, maybe worried, cautious from the start. Like, he always knew something was up. If they thought a plan was too risky, he brought up the risk. Like, he would say, like, what if Eraldo's a spy with the cops? Why aren't you guys bringing that up? What if one of us is a spy? But no one would listen to him. So I feel like he should probably feel vindicated with everything that's going on, like in his little private meeting, and the fact they're watching this all on TV. I hope he's vindicated, because honestly, I would argue he was one of the smartest of Yotsuba, just seeing the cracks, like, seeing the plot twist that could happen, because I was kind of asking the same questions, like, why aren't these people thinking the things he's thinking. There's a wild goose chase that Higuchi obviously doesn't win. It gets to the point where even L is willingly getting in this he's willingly leaving this hotel and getting into this helicopter to surround Higuchi, but he ends up being cornered by the Japanese police, and then you find out the guy who plotted it all was Aizawa. I knew he had to come back at one point just because I thought the authors just dropped him. Like, once he left L's premises and then there's that panel of him crying to his family, they just never showed him again. And I was like, what happened to this character? Did they just get rid of him? So I'm glad he's back, and I'm actually glad he was the one behind all this because it shows that he still really cared about this case and he still wanted to help his friends and wanted to end everything that was going on. And then the last panel of this volume is of Higuchi by his steering wheel, defeated. There's no words, but you see his death note poking out of his tote bag. It's anxiety inducing, you know, like those last few chapters I was whipping through because we were finally like getting to the good stuff. It wasn't just the characters just sitting around arguing with each other. Like, finally, the wild goose chase we were all waiting for. We're officially halfway through the series. Hey guys, so change of plans. I looked at the raw footage of what I have already, and it is so fucking long that I decided to split this vlogs into 2 parts. Part 2 is going to be Black Editions 4 through 6, or regular volumes 7 through 12.
So before I peace out, I do want to give this video somewhat of a proper conclusion. Again, final thoughts. I somewhat touch on this, but when I was editing the beginning of this vlog, it did make me realize that Light always had somewhat of a superiority complex, and he always had a strong moral code. Editing this video made me realize he really is the perfect person to use the Death Note in this way. And I do touch upon the fact that him losing his memories does prove he was always doomed to become the monster we now know him as. And then another thing I want to touch on is that Misa's actually a lot smarter than I remember her being. I could also just be being a bitch because I didn't like her at all in the anime. But she's so much smarter than I remember. I mean, because first of all, when she sent the tapes to Sakura TV, she was talking about how, like, she had a friend do it so that her fingertips wouldn't get mixed up. Granted, her fibers and hair did get her in trouble, but everything else was pretty well thought out. When trying to find Light in a crowd, she made sure to disguise herself. I feel like social media paints Misa out to be this dumbass, but if she was truly the dumbass social media, or like Twitter, I should say, because Twitter is a cesspool. If she was truly the dumbass Twitter makes her out to be, she would not have done all that. And the whole thing with the Yotsuba guy, with Higuchi, she was pretty smart with that too, like making sure to record it on her phone. Good for her. And she also just has so much luck because I feel like there's so many opportunities where she should have died but just didn't. I mean, first, thank God she has Shinigami looking out for her, so now she can live for 1,000 years for all we know. But it's also just funny because I didn't really mention this throughout the vlog, but there's multiple times in the manga where Light is trying to figure out ways to get rid of her, but something always happens so that he can't because it would look too suspicious. So luck is just on Misa's side. And of course, I did catch on to some symbolism, which I did catch while reading, and they were in my original clips. It's just I stutter over my words so much, so I just took them out, thought I would re-say them here, and especially now that I've had so long to sit on them and think about it. But I love the idea of the apples because to me the apples reminds me of the original sin of Adam and Eve eating an apple from the tree of life, you know, that source of temptation. And we can argue, you know, it symbolizes Light being tempted by the Death Note, so that's what it symbolizes to me. And it's just hilarious because I did read somewhere, I've never read Death Note 13, but I did look up like a quick summary, and apparently Sugumi, that's not what Sugumi Oba wanted to tell the readers. He just liked how it contrasted with Ryuk. But I think it's just a cool coincidence. Justice is a big theme in this series, obviously, because everyone has their own moral codes, and that begs the question who can and cannot bring justice. I talk about this a lot more in part 2 of this vlog, so I'm just going to move on and save it for that. But then the next one is just who Light and L represent as characters as compared to the Bible. There's a lot of Christian allegories in this story. I mean, the most obvious being Light having his God complex, because he may think he's God, but the way I see him more as an antichrist, which I'm very sure is what the authors were going for, because he is this evil person, just like the Antichrist, and wants to rule the world. Whereas L is actually more so like Jesus. The most obvious comparison is being that he wants to save the world from this evil. He has quote-unquote disciples, which is the Japanese task force, and even the way he treats them is like how Jesus treated his disciples. He tells everyone to leave behind their worldly possessions as in cell phones and blah blah blah, can't say anything to your family, in order to follow him, just like Jesus asked his disciples to leave everything behind to follow him. And Jesus was constantly testing his disciples. disciples, and L constantly tests the Japanese task force to see who's lying and who's not. And one of L's disciples betrays him, just like one of Jesus' disciples betrayed him. Jesus' disciple being Judas. That means Light is the Judas in this situation. So that is another comparison I noticed. A small one I also noticed, because I think if I remember my Christian upbringing correctly, I'm not really religious anymore, but if I remember correctly, Judas's dad was also one of the disciples. If we're going to keep running with the comparison of Light as Judas, Light's dad is also one of L's quote-unquote disciples. But yeah, those were the main takeaways I wanted to discuss before ending this video. Anything else I have to say pertaining to volumes 1 through 6, I already said in the video. As a whole, of course, I have a lot more to say, but of course, I want to have some stuff left for the next vlog. Don't know when that's coming out, but be on the lookout for that. And at this point in the series, I am really enjoying it. If I remember correctly, I gave the first 2 Black Edition volumes about 4 stars. The third one I gave about 3.5, but I'm not hating the series by any means. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill, and without further ado, I'm gonna peace out, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao a tutti.